Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice is a 2016 American superhero film based on the DC Comics characters Batman and Superman. Produced by Warner Bros. Pictures, Rat Pack Dune Entertainment, DC Entertainment, Atlas Entertainment, and Cruel and Unusual Films, and distributed by Warner Bros. It is a follow-up to the 2013 film Man of Steel and the second film in the DC Extended Universe, DCEU. 9 Directed by Zack Snyder and written by Chris Terrio and David S. Goyer, the film stars Ben Affleck as Batman and Henry Cavill as Superman, alongside an ensemble cast including Amy Adams, Jesse Eisenberg, Diane Lane, Lawrence Fishburne, Jeremy Irons, Holly Hunter, and Gal Gadot. Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice is the first live-action film to feature Batman and Superman together, as well as the first live-action cinematic portrayal of Wonder Woman. In the film, criminal mastermind Lex Luthor manipulates Batman into a preemptive battle with Superman, who Luthor is obsessed with destroying. The film was announced at the 2013 San Diego Comic-Con after the release of Man of Steel. Snyder stated that the film would take inspiration from the Batman comic book series The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller, but clarified that it would follow an original premise. The incarnation of Batman in the film is different from the character's previous portrayal by Christian Bale in the Dark Knight trilogy, serving as a cinematic reboot of the character. The film is also inspired by narrative elements from the Superman comic book series The Death of Superman. Pre-production began at East Los Angeles College in October 2013, and principal photography started in May 2014 in Detroit. Additional filming also took place in Illinois and New Mexico, concluding that December. Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice premiered at the Auditorio Nacional in Mexico City on March 19, 2016 and was released in the United States on March 25. Following a strong debut that set new box office records, the film experienced a historic drop in its second weekend and never recovered. Although it grossed $874.4 million worldwide, making it the 7th highest grossing film of 2016, it performed below expectations and was poorly received from critics. A director's cut, dubbed the Ultimate Edition, features 31 minutes of additional footage and was released to home media formats later in 2016. A follow-up, titled Justice League, was released on November 17, 2017. Plot: in a flashback to his childhood, Bruce Wayne runs from his parents' funeral. He falls into a cave, where a circling vortex of bats elevates him back to the surface. In the present, 18 months after his cataclysmic battle with General Zod in Metropolis, Superman has become a controversial figure. Bruce is now a billionaire who has operated in Gotham City as the masked vigilante Batman for 20 years. Having witnessed the battle in person, he sees Superman as an existential threat to humanity. Clark Kent, Superman's civilian identity, seeks to condemn Batman's form of justice in Daily Planet articles. Bruce learns that Russian weapon trafficker Anatoly Niazev has been contacting LexCorp mogul Lex Luthor. Luthor attempts to persuade U.S. Senator June Finch to allow him to import kryptonite discovered in the aftermath of Zod's terraforming attempt, so that it can be used as a deterrent against future Kryptonian threats. She declines, but Luthor makes alternative plans with Finch's subordinate, who grants him access to Zod's corpse and the Kryptonian scout ship. B. Bruce attends a gala at LexCorp to steal encrypted data from the company's mainframe, but antiquities dealer Diana Prince steals it first. She later returns it to Bruce. While decrypting the drive, Bruce dreams of a post-apocalyptic world where he leads rebels against an evil Superman. He is awakened by an unidentified person, appearing through a portal, who tells him that Lois Lane is the key and urges him to find the others before vanishing. See the decrypted drive reveals Luthor's files on several meta-humans across the globe. One is Diana, who appears in a photo from World War I. Wayne contemplates weaponizing the kryptonite to go to war with Superman. A widely publicized congressional hearing, being held at the U.S. Capitol, led by Finch, is held to question Superman's actions against Zod. A bomb smuggled in by Luthor detonates, killing everyone present except Superman. Superman blames himself for not detecting it in time and self-imposes exile. In response, Batman breaks into LexCorp and steals the kryptonite. He builds a powered exoskeleton, a kryptonite grenade launcher, and a kryptonite-tipped spear. Meanwhile, Luthor enters the Kryptonian ship and accesses its vast database of technology. Luthor lures Superman out of exile by kidnapping Martha Kent, Clark's adoptive mother, and Lois, who he pushes off the LexCorp building. Superman saves Lois and confronts Luthor, who reveals that the distrust between Batman and Superman was manipulated. Luthor demands that he kill Batman in exchange for Martha's life. Superman tries to explain this to Batman, who instead attacks and eventually subdues him using a kryptonite gas. As Batman prepares to deal the final blow using the spear, Superman pleads with him to save Martha, the same name as Batman's mother. Batman hesitates in confusion, as Lois arrives and explains what Superman meant. Coming to his senses, Batman locates and rescues Martha. Luthor executes his backup plan, unleashing a monster genetically engineered using DNA from both Zod's body and his own. Diana joins Batman and Superman in their fight against the creature. Batman realizes its vulnerability to kryptonite and Superman fatally impales the creature with the kryptonite spear. Superman, already weakened by kryptonite exposure, is fatally wounded by the creature before it dies. Following Luthor's arrest, Batman confronts him in prison, warning him that he will always be watching. Luthor gloats that Superman's death has made the world vulnerable to powerful alien threats. A memorial is held for Superman in Metropolis, while Bruce and Diana attend a funeral for Clark, who was also declared dead. Martha gives Lois an envelope containing an engagement ring from Clark. Bruce tells Diana that he regrets failing Superman and asks for her help in forming a team of meta-humans to protect Earth in Superman's absence. As they leave, the dirt atop Clark's coffin levitates. Cast. Further information, list of DC Extended Universe cast members and characters of the DC Extended Universe. Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne/Batman. A billionaire socialite and owner of Wayne Enterprises who dedicates himself to protecting Gotham City from its criminal underworld as a highly trained, masked vigilante. 13. The batsuit in this film is made of a form-fitting fabric as opposed to the armored suits in previous portrayals, and a mechanical suit is also featured which Batman uses in his fight against Superman. On Batman's suit, Zack Snyder commented, "I had a really strong idea about what I wanted to do. I really wanted to do sort of a fabric-based Batman, not what's become the more normal, armored Batman. That's how we evolved it." 14. Unlike previous versions who spoke in a deeper voice as Batman, this version uses a voice modulator to distort his real voice. Affleck stated a well-known billionaire would likely have his voice recognized. When asked what makes this Batman different from the previous portrayals, Affleck said this Batman is a little older, he's a little more world-weary. He's been around the block once or twice, so he's a little wiser, but he's definitely more cynical and a little darker and more jaded, adding that Batman has gotten more exposed to the violence and the criminal element of that world over time. 15. The film's Batman was influenced by Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, which shows Batman in his 50s. Snyder said, "I definitely wanted an older Batman. I wanted a war-weary Batman. That's why, in a lot of ways, Ben was really perfect for me. We kind of aged him a little bit. It worked really great. I'm really excited about the Batman we created." 14. On Affleck's casting as Batman, Snyder said, "Ben provides an interesting counterbalance to Henry's Superman. He has the acting chops to create a layered portrayal of a man who is older and wiser than Clark Kent and bears the scars of a seasoned crime fighter, but retain the charm that the world sees in billionaire Bruce Wayne." 16. Affleck praised Snyder for tackling the impact of the destruction caused in Metropolis in the previous installment, saying, One of the things I liked was Zack's idea of showing accountability and the consequences of violence and seeing that there are real people in those buildings, adding, and in fact, one of those buildings was Bruce Wayne's building, so he knew people who died in that Black Zero event. 17. Brandon Spink portrays a young Bruce Wayne. 18. Henry Cavill as Clark Kent/Superman. A Metropolis-based Kryptonian survivor and a journalist for the Daily Planet who uses his extraterrestrial abilities to protect humanity. Superman's suit in Batman v Superman is somewhat similar to that in Man of Steel, but with enhanced, high-tech style surface detail and a shinier, more metallic-looking cape. 19. A quote written in Kryptonian was added into Superman's symbol, which says, "Where we had thought to stand alone, we will be with all the world." 20. The film addresses the destruction caused by Superman and Zod in Metropolis, a part of Man of Steel that was criticized for being too extensive for Superman, to which Snyder responded, "I was surprised because that's the thesis of Superman for me, that you can't just have superheroes knock around and have there be no consequences." 17. On what the public perception of Superman is in the film, Cavill said, "In this movie, everyone has split into different directions as to how they feel about this alien," adding, "Some people love him, some hate him. Other people fear him. Is he a tyrant?" 21. When asked how Superman has evolved since Man of Steel, Cavill said Superman himself isn't that different. He does, however, have to deal with a new set of problems because he's now been revealed to the world. This film is more about how the world in general, and Batman in particular, sees this alien, and less about the evolution of Superman. Cavill described Superman and Batman as being the two sides of the same coin. They have the same goal, but use very different methods to achieve it. Understandably, that leads them to clash with one another, and their conflict is a historic moment. 22. Amy Adams as Lois Lane. A reporter for the Daily Planet and love interest of Clark Kent. 23-24. About her role, Adams stated that Lois is still sort of like the key to the information. She's the girl going out and getting it and figuring it out and putting it together and all of that, so she's very much involved. 25. When asked on her thoughts on portraying Lois Lane in the film, Adams replied, "I love that she's fearless. I'm not that way, so it's really fun that she really is not afraid of the consequences." On Lois Lane and Clark Kent's relationship in the film, Adams said, "What's great about this is that, as far as the relationship with Lois and Clark goes, when we meet them you can tell that they've been in a relationship for a while," further explaining, "So it was great to get to develop that sort of intimacy and that sort of friendship that I've developed with Henry, to get to bring that to the screen." 26. She also described Clark Kent as being Lois Lane's connection to humanity and said, "She may have some tunnel vision, but she's got a job and moral standards. When we met her before, she would do anything to get the story. Now Clark has instilled some faith in humanity in her. Her relationship with Clark is the closest thing she has to anything faith-based, you know? Although moving in with Clark brings issues." 27. Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. An eccentric young businessman and hereditary CEO of LexCorp who is obsessed with defeating Superman. 28-29. Luthor is usually depicted as bald in the comics, while the film's version of Luthor depicts him with hair throughout the majority of the film. When speaking about his portrayal of Luthor compared to previous portrayals, Eisenberg said, "When you're doing a movie like this and playing a character that's already been played, the further away it is from those previous incarnations the better," adding, "Because chances are, especially with a guy like Gene Hackman or Kevin Spacey, you're not going to get favorably compared." Eisenberg explained his character's background as having a core of reality, saying, "Luthor has a backstory that's tragic and an emotional inner life that's authentic. That's in the movie. It was my interest in playing the character with a real emotional core, and this writer, Chris Terrio's interest in creating a character that seemed viable in reality." On Luthor's behavior and attitude towards Superman, Eisenberg said, he is a narcissist of the first order, but complicated in that way as well, in that he is terribly troubled and competitive and vengeful. He looks at Superman not as somebody to destroy but as genuine threat to humanity. 30. Eisenberg described his role as Lex Luthor as his most advantageous role yet, saying, "In a lot of ways Luthor is more of a stretch than any character you would do in an independent movie, which is normally the place you stretch. So in that way it was not at all compromised. If anything, it was the best, most advantageous role I've ever been given. The opportunity to do an interesting character on a movie of that scale is incredibly rare." 31. Eisenberg describes a theme in the film, saying, "It raises the question of how one man can have so much power. These are the kind of things that we talk about authoritarian states. They're addressing geopolitics in this movie, and not in a way that's pretentious or esoteric." 32. Diane Lane as Martha Kent, Clark's adoptive mother. 23. On her role as Superman's mother, Lane stated, "I always said if I had a son that would be the ultimate test. Raise a good man, there's something noble about that." When asked on her experience working with Zack Snyder on Batman v Superman, Lane said she was impressed by Snyder's imagination and added, "Who gets offered the opportunity to bring such things to the screen for millions of people? That's tremendous. It's an honor and a burden, and I can't imagine shouldering that load." 33. On Martha Kent's support for her son Superman, Lane stated, "I think that she's reminding him he does have a choice," further explaining, "He doesn't have to be yoked to this destiny. He can actually feel the pleasure of making the choice." 34. Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White, the editor-in-chief of the Daily Planet and Clark and Lois' boss. 23. When asked about reprising his role in the film, Fishburne said, "I was happy to come back to the character. I got really excited when I read it and I saw what was at the center at the movie, which was this huge fight between these two titans." 35. On Perry White's role in the film, Fishburne said, "He's dealing with the fact that his medium looks like it's going the way of the dinosaurs, so that's a difficult position to be in," adding, "The good news is he's got a great reporter like Lois Lane and a new great reporter like Clark Kent who are interested and hungry to do the job." 36. Describing Perry White's working relationship with Lois Lane, Fishburne stated, "She's my favorite child and she's my problem child." 37. On his experience filming and his characters' interactions, Fishburne said, "It was really just a couple of days in the beginning with Lois, Clark, and Perry. And the rest was just me with Lois, figuring out how to get her where she needed to go. But the relationships I think were established really well in Man of Steel." 38. Jeremy Irons as Alfred Pennyworth, Bruce Wayne's butler, chief of security and trusted confidant. 28. Irons described his take on Alfred Pennyworth as being quite a different Alfred than we have seen so far. Zack Snyder had very clear views about what he wanted. I would just say he's more hands-on perhaps than just a butler. 39. When asked what makes his Alfred different from previous portrayals, Irons said, "Zack Snyder, the director, wanted to create a completely different Alfred. So I felt I didn't have to carry any baggage from previous ones. It's sort of a reincarnation, if you'd like. I had a feeling I was creating my own Alfred, more of a man who can actually do anything if he has to." 40. According to Irons, Alfred is a bit of a grease monkey, and he's very involved in the decisions Bruce makes. 41. On how Alfred would be in the film, Irons stated, "He has an interesting history. He's a very competent man. He's the sort of man I think anyone would like to be married to. He can sort of do everything, change light bulbs, blow up bridges if he has to." 42. Holly Hunter as June Finch, United States Senator from Kentucky who heads the political argument on Superman and his actions. 43-44 Describing her experience on being in the film, Hunter said, "It was really fun to be part of a giant, massive piece of machinery, headed up by Zack Snyder, who is thoroughly at home in that uber mega environment. Most people would have a nervous breakdown with that kind of pressure, and he's enthralled. 45. When asked how she got involved in the film, Hunter said, "Zach asked me. He came to me with an offer, and I was like, yeah, that would be fun. It's fun to mix it up. I have scenes with Superman. He looks phenomenal. And to see Ben Affleck, who plays Batman, and Henry Cavill, who plays Superman together is quite formidable." 46. On acting in a superhero film, Hunter stated, "Being somebody who's like a theater geek that I am, I can just go right back to Aeschylus and Euripides and Sophocles. They were writing about gods and goddesses versus humans, and how gods could distort, pervert or help people get what they want. And so, for me, this didn't feel foreign because that was the translation that it went through for me, that was my filter." 47. On her character's views on Superman, Hunter stated, "What is her problem with Superman? That absolute power corrupts absolutely. When power is acting autonomously, unilaterally with no legislation, with no boundaries, with no law, except for the ones that he deems in his own mind, that can be detrimental." 47. Describing her character, Hunter said, "I thought that, you know, as a senator, she brought her femaleness to the job in how she listened, in her curiosity, in her ability to evaluate," adding, "It felt very female to me." 48. Gal Gadot as Diana Prince / Wonder Woman. 49. An immortal Amazonian warrior who is the crown princess of Themyscira. 50-51 Wonder Woman suit is made out of chrome-painted polyurethane, and she uses her hand wraps and sword harnesses. 19 Gadot described her character as having many strengths and powers, but at the end of the day, she's a woman with a lot of emotional intelligence. 52 Describing Wonder Woman's compassion, Gadot stated, "It's all her heart that's her strength. I think women are amazing for being able to show what they feel. I admire women who do." On her thoughts on portraying Wonder Woman, Gadot said, "You know Wonder Woman, she's amazing. I love everything that she represents and everything that she stands for. She's all about love and compassion and truth and justice and equality, and she's a whole lot of woman. For me, it was important that people can relate to her." Describing her role in the film, Gadot said, "In this movie you get a glimpse of who Wonder Woman is. She's being introduced into this DC Comics universe. But we were talking about her strengths, her facade, her attitude. Why is she acting the way she is?" On Wonder Woman's battle scene with Doomsday, Gadot stated, "I remember after we did that take, Zach came to me and he said, 'Did you just have a smirk?' I said, 'Yeah.' And he asked, 'Why?' I think I like it, but why? Well, if he's gonna mess with her, then she's gonna mess with him. And she knows she's gonna win. At the end of the day, Wonder Woman is a peace seeker. But when fight arrives, she can fight. She's a warrior and she enjoys the adrenaline of the fight." 53. Gadot also stated, "I don't want people to think she is perfect," further explaining, "She can be naughty." 54. On Gadot's casting as Wonder Woman, Snyder said Wonder Woman is arguably one of the most powerful female characters of all time and a fan favorite in the DC universe. Not only is Gal an amazing actress, but she also has that magical quality that makes her perfect for the role. 55. Gadot underwent a diet and training regimen, practiced different martial arts and gained 17 pounds, 7.71 kilograms European Union, of muscle for the role. 56-57 Gadot was previously offered the role as Fairy Huol in Man of Steel but declined because she was pregnant at that time. This allowed her to be later cast as Wonder Woman. 58. Scoot McNairy as Wallace Keefe. An amputee employee of Wayne Enterprises who is crippled during the destruction of Metropolis and holds Superman responsible. 59 McNary describes his character as a type of character who he has never played before and stated getting into that thing was definitely something I had to wrap my head around emotionally in order to play that character. 60. When asked if the character was being kept as a surprise until the film's release, McNary said, "I don't know if I'd call it necessarily a surprise. I would say it's a character that lends itself to the story being told." 61. On his thoughts on being in the film, McNary stated, "Playing in that world with comic books you've been reading since you were a kid, being someone in that world, it's awesome." 62. Callan Mulvey as Anatoly Kniazev, a Russian terrorist who works for Luthor. 43. On casting Mulvey in the film, Zack Snyder stated, "I just had the good fortune to work with Callan on 300, Rise of an Empire, and was very impressed with his incredible talent," further adding, "He's a fantastic actor and I'm looking forward to having the chance to work with him again." 63. On working with Snyder again, Mulvey stated, "Zack is such a visionary, so I know it's going to be an amazing project. Talent as a director aside, people really love working for Zack and being on his sets, which says it all really." 64. Tao Akamoto as Mercy Graves, assistant to Luthor. 65. On her role in the film, Akamoto said, "It was so fascinating. I didn't have a big speaking role. I used to act as sassy girls all the time as a model, so that wasn't so challenging to me. But I enjoyed it so much, being mean. I tried to be mean." 66. On Akamoto's casting, Snyder said, "Tao is a striking presence whose beauty is aptly rivaled by her amazing abilities as an actress. I'm really excited to have her joining us on this adventure." 67. Robin Atkin Downes performed the motion capture and voice work for the creature at the film's climax. 12. Although the character is not named directly, it was revealed later to be that of Doomsday. The role was kept under such heavy secrecy that Downes did not know who he was playing until the second trailer was released. 68. On his role, Downes stated that he was proud to be part of the film and expressed his admiration in helping bring Doomsday to life in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. 69. Snyder has confirmed Doomsday will return in the DCEU, stating, "Well, you have Doomsday, right? He doesn't just crawl out of the ground. He has his own mythology, right? So that has to be explored." 70. Downes has previously provided voice roles for various DC animated films and shows as well as DC video games. 69. Additionally, Jeffrey Dean Morgan portrays Thomas Wayne in an uncredited appearance and Lauren Cohan portrays Martha Wayne, Bruce Wayne's deceased parents. 71-72. Patrick Wilson, who later portrayed Ocean Master in Aquaman and its sequel, portrays the President of the United States in a voice role, and Michael Cassidy portrays Jimmy Olsen, a CIA agent. 73. Reprising their roles from Man of Steel are Harry Lennox as Secretary Calvin Swanwick. 74. Christina Wren as Major Carrie Farris. 75. Kevin Costner as Jonathan Kent. 76. Rebecca Buller as Jenny Jerwich, Chad Krochik as Glenn Woodburn, and Carla Gugino as the Kryptonian AI Kalair. 77. The corpse of General Zod also appears in the film in a crucial role. However, Michael Shannon did not film any scenes for the film and the corpse was created using the physique of fitness model Greg Plitt and a headshot of Shannon. 78. Hugh McGuire portrays Jack O'Dwyer, an executive of Wayne Enterprises. 79-80. Ezra Miller, Jason Momoa, and Ray Fisher are introduced as Barry Allen/The Flash, Arthur Curry/Aquaman, and Victor Stone/Cyborg respectively in brief appearances, which led to their inclusion in the Justice League film. 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88. Joe Morton appears in a role as Silas Stone, Victor's father. 89. U.S. Senator Patrick Leahy makes a cameo appearance as Senator Purrington, whilst U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow also makes a cameo as the Governor of New Jersey. 1991. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Soledad O'Brien, Anderson Cooper, Nancy Grace, Charlie Rose, Dana Bash, Andrew Sullivan, and Vikram Gandhi appear as themselves. 92 Sami Rotibi was cast as General Amajok. 93 while Vunmi Mozaku portrays Kahina Zuri, a woman from Naramai who initially testifies to the US Congress against Superman. 94 Jenna Malone was cast as STAR. Lab scientist Janet Clyburn, but her scenes were cut from the theatrical release, along with Man of Steel characters Coburn Goss as Father Leone, Joseph Cranford as Pete Ross and Emily Peterson as Lana Lang. They were restored for the Ultimate Edition home media release. 95 talk show host Jon Stewart has a cameo in the extended cut. To further establish the interconnection between the films of the shared universe, Chris Pine, Seth Takamwi, Ewan Bramner, and Eugene Brave Rock appear in Diana Prince's photo as Steve Trevor, Samir, Charlie, and Chief Napi, all characters who would appear in the Wonder Woman film. 96, 97, 98. Production. Development. In the early 2000s, Warner Brothers wanted to reboot the Superman film series with an origin story. 99 In August 2001, Andrew Kevin Walker was hired after pitching the studio an idea titled Batman vs. Superman, attaching Wolfgang Peterson as director. 100 Walker's draft was thought of as too dark by the studio, who hired Akiva Goldsman to do a rewrite, which was codenamed Asylum. 101 102 Warner Brothers wanted Johnny Depp as Batman and Josh Hartnett as Superman. 103 Filming was to start in early 2003, with plans for a 5 to 6 month shoot, and a release date was set for the summer of 2004. 104 In late 2002, Peterson, however, put the project on hold to make Troy. 105 In August 2008, the studio's president of production Jeff Robinov admitted, had Superman worked in 2006, i.e. with Superman Returns, we would have had a movie for Christmas of this year or 2009. Now the plan is just to reintroduce Superman without regard to a Batman and Superman movie at all. After Man of Steel finished and we started talking about what would be in the next movie, I started subtly mentioning that it would be cool if he faced Batman. You're in a story meeting talking about, like, who should Superman fight if he fought this giant alien threat who was basically his equal physically, from his planet, fighting on our turf. You know, who to fight next. But I'm not gonna say at all that when I took the job to do Man of Steel that I did it in a subversive way to get to Batman. I really believe that only after contemplating who could face Superman did Batman come into the picture. Snyder, on how Batman came into the film 106. In June 2013, around the time of Man of Steel's release, the studio announced that director Zack Snyder and screenwriter David S. Goyer would return for a sequel 107, with the studio considering a 2015 release. 108 The following month, Snyder confirmed at San Diego Comic-Con that the follow-up to Man of Steel would be Batman vs. Superman, featuring Superman and Batman meeting for the first time on film. Goyer and Snyder would co-write the story, and Goyer would write the script. 23 109 Christopher Nolan was involved in an advisory role as executive producer. 110 Snyder and Nolan considered having Man of Steel share continuity with Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy, but decided against it. Given The Dark Knight Rises, 2012, ended with John Blake, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, taking over as Batman for Bruce Wayne, Christian Bale, Snyder agreed that a connection between the two franchises could have complicated things for Batman vs. Superman, as audiences would commonly expect to see Bruce Wayne slug it out with Superman instead of a different character using the Batman alias. 111 According to Snyder, the film would take inspiration from the comic The Dark Knight Returns. 112 In November 2013, Snyder clarified his film would not be based upon the aforementioned graphic novel. If you were going to do that, you would need a different Superman. We're bringing Batman into the universe that now the Superman lives in. 113. The film also marks the first appearance of Wonder Woman in a live-action, theatrical feature 49 which Warner Brothers had been developing as far back as 1996. 114 In December 2013, Chris Terrio was hired to rewrite the script, due to Goyler's commitments to other projects. 115 Further commenting on the influences, Terrio revealed that the film would draw inspiration from Nolan's Batman trilogy, Italian semiotician Umberto Eco's 1972 essay The Myth of Superman, and the W.H. Auden poem Musée des Beaux-Arts, which contrasts the quotidian details of normal people's lives with the epic struggles of mythological figures. According to him, in superhero stories, Batman is Pluto, god of the underworld, and Superman is Apollo, god of the sky. That began to be really interesting to me, that their conflict is not just due to manipulation, but their very existence. 116. The Joker and the Riddler were supposed to appear in the film, but Snyder ultimately decided to cut them from the final script. 117. The film's official title, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, was revealed in May 2014. 118. Snyder explained that having the V in the title instead of versus was a way to keep it from being a straight versus movie, even in the most subtle way. 119. Henry Cavill later stated, "I wouldn't call this a Superman sequel, this is Batman vs Superman. It's a separate entity altogether. It's introducing the Batman character and expanding upon the universe, which was kicked off by Man of Steel." 120. Forbes noted that although the film originated as a sequel to Man of Steel, it was revamped into a backdoor pilot for Justice League and / or an eventual standalone Batman movie. 121. As part of a settlement with his heirs, this is the first Batman production that lists Bill Finger as a co-creator. 122. In April 2021, Terrio revealed that his script was never titled Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, while Snyder indicated that the name of the film was decided by studio executives and that he fought for the abbreviation of the word versus in the title. Potential titles that the pair initially wanted included Justice League, Foundations, Justice League, Rising, and Son of Sun and Night of Night. 123. Casting. From left, Zack Snyder, director, Holly Hunter, Jeremy Irons, Gal Gadot, Jesse Eisenberg, Amy Adams, Henry Cavill, and Ben Affleck at the 2015 San Diego Comic-Con. Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Kevin Costner, Diane Lane, Lawrence Fishburne, Harry Lennox, and Christina Wren reprise their roles from Man of Steel. 74. 75. 124. Joining the cast are Ben Affleck as Batman, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, Jeremy Irons as Alfred Pennyworth. 124. Ray Fisher as Cyborg. 86. Jason Momoa as Aquaman, Ezra Miller as The Flash. 84. 85. and Tao Akamoto as Luthor's assistant Mercy Graves. 65. Scoot McNairy and Callan Mulvey were cast as Wallace Keefe and Anatoly Niazev, while Jenna Malone was cast as Janet Clyburn, a character that was featured exclusively in the Ultimate Edition home media release. 43. 59. 96. 125. Dawn of Justice is Affleck's second film as a comic book superhero. He played Daredevil in the 2003 film of the same name. 126. And was initially reluctant to accept playing Batman, citing that he felt he didn't fit the traditional mold, but he became excited after Snyder showed him the concept and reassured him that the film would be different from Nolan's trilogy. 127. Snyder cast an older Batman to be a layered juxtaposition against a younger Superman, while bearing the scars of a seasoned crime fighter, but retaining the charm that the world sees in billionaire Bruce Wayne. 13. Nolan was involved with the casting of Affleck and he was the first actor Snyder approached for the part. 110. Ryan Gosling, Joe Manganiello, Richard Armitage, Max Martini, and Matthew Good were considered for the role. 128. The director had also discussed the part with Josh Brolin. 129 Christian Bale admitted he wanted to play Batman again after The Dark Knight Rises. 130 Though he stated that his Batman does not belong in any other film and he was never approached by Warner Brothers to play the role again. 131 132 Jason Momoa auditioned for Batman, but was cast as Aquaman instead. 133. On casting Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, Snyder offered, "Having Jesse in the role allows us to explore that interesting dynamic, and also take the character in some new and unexpected directions." 28 134 Producer Charles Roven revealed that this incarnation of Wonder Woman would use the character's origins from 2011's The New 52 reboot of the DC continuity, wherein the character would be a demi-goddess, and the daughter of Zeus. This deviates from the character's original origins, where she was a clay figure brought to life by the gods. 51 Olga Kurylenko, Jamie Alexander, and Elodie Yung. 135 were considered for the role of Wonder Woman before Gadot was cast. 136 Dawn of Justice is Ray Fisher's feature film debut. 137 and the first live-action film to feature Cyborg. 138 whose role originally was to become more significant in future DC Comics films. 139 It is also the live-action theatrical debut of Aquaman. 140 Snyder almost cast Adam Driver as Dick Grayson / Nightwing. 141 and Carla Gugino as Catwoman. 142. The casting of Affleck, Gadot, and Eisenberg was criticized. Affleck's casting caused significant backlash from comic book fans, with multiple online petitions demanding his removal from the role. Unlike previous Batman actors, he was not considered intimidating enough for the role by the protesters. 143 Conversely, Pop Matters journalist J.C. Masick III supported Affleck's casting as Batman, stating, "Way back when the news was new I wrote a Pop Matters article defending the choice of Ben Affleck as Batman. I'll let that one speak for itself." 144 145. Via social media, fans criticized Gadot's small frame in contrast to Wonder Woman's warrior-like build in the comics. 146 Responding to this, Gadot stated that she had been participating in various training regimens to achieve a body that stays closer to the source material. 147 Fans also criticized Eisenberg's casting, feeling that the then 30-year-old was too young for the role, and not physically imposing enough. 148 Upon the film's release, both Affleck and Gadot received considerable praise for their performances, despite the overall negative reception of the film itself. 149 150. Design. Michael Wilkinson reprised his duties as costume designer. He updated the Superman suit from Man of Steel so that it feels fresh and right for this installment of Zack Snyder's comic book universe. 151 The first Batsuit featured in the film is influenced by The Dark Knight Returns. 152 Unlike the suit seen in previous live-action Batman films, it is made of cloth instead of armor and is a cast of the physique of fitness model Rossano Arie. 153 154 An image of the Wonder Woman costume was revealed at the 2014 San Diego Comic-Con, in which the costume desaturates the red, blue, and gold colors that make up the costume of most versions of the character. 155. A second Batsuit was also unveiled at Comic-Con, and unlike the first, it is armored. 156 Aquaman's look in this film shows him tattooed in Maori-like patterns, and wearing a suit decked out in shades of gold, black, and silver armor. 157 According to the Warner Brothers Studios lot, the next-generation Batmobile combined inspiration from both the sleek, streamlined design of classic Batmobiles and the high suspension, military build from the more recent Tumbler from the Dark Knight trilogy. Designed by production designer Patrick Tatopoulos, the Batmobile is about 20 feet, 6.1 m European Union, long and 12 feet, 3.66 m European Union, wide. 158 The glasses Cavill wears as Clark Kent are made by British spectacle designer Tom Davies. 159. Filming. In September 2013, Larry Fong joined the crew as cinematographer, having previously worked with Zack Snyder on 300, Watchmen, and Sucker Punch. 160 initial filming commenced on October 19, 2013, at East Los Angeles College, to shoot an American football game between Gotham City University and rival Metropolis State University. 161 at the end of the month, construction began on the Kent Farm scene in Man of Steel for the film. 162 principal photography involving the main cast of the film began on May 19, 2014, in Detroit, Michigan. 163 with scenes featuring Gal Gadot as Diana Prince being filmed early on May 16. 164 while filming in Michigan, the production spent a total of $199 million in the state. 6. The scene of a state funeral at the Arlington National Cemetery, a tribute by the United States Army. 165 was actually filmed in Michigan as well, using green screen. 166. Additional filming began in Chicago, Illinois in November 2014. 167 other locations included the Michigan Motion Picture Studios, the Eli and Edith Broad Art Museum at Michigan State University, Yorkville, Illinois, the South Pacific, and New Mexico. 168 169 170 sequences of the film, including a scene depicting the murder of Bruce Wayne's parents, were filmed using IMAX cameras. 171 The planned shoot in Morocco was shifted to New Mexico due to incidents related to the 2014 Ebola outbreak. 172 Principal photography wrapped on December 5, 2014. 173. Music. Main article, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, soundtrack. Hans Zimmer composed the film's score. 174 Emphasizing a challenge not to reuse the themes he established with the Batman character from Christopher Nolan's trilogy. 175 Junkie XL, who provided additional music in Man of Steel, also returned for this film, helping to compose the theme for Batman. 176 Originally, Zimmer enlisted Junkie XL to compose the Batman material, with Zimmer planning to focus solely on the Superman side of the score, but the final Batman theme was written by both composers as a collaboration. 177 Zimmer noted that he had significant trouble in finding a new angle from which to tell the story, and after the release of the film, Zimmer announced that he was retired from superhero films. 178 Though he has since retracted this. 179 The soundtrack album of the film was released on March 18, 2016, by Watertower Music. 180. Songs featured in the film include, Conling, an instrument made from a human thigh bone, a traditional song performed by the monks of the Diptse Monastery, Dharamshala, Night and Day and Every Time We Say Goodbye, written by Cole Porter and performed by Richard Cheese, Shostakovich. Waltz 2, Jazz Suite No. 2, written by Dmitri Shostakovich. 181 182 performed by the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra conducted by Ricardo Cayley, and Amazing Grace arranged and performed by John Allen. 183 and again performed by the Canadian Scottish Regiment Pipes and Drums and the United States 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing Band. 184 185. Marketing. An estimated $165 million marketing effort helped promote Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. 186 At the 2014 San Diego Comic-Con, Snyder introduced the film's first footage intended to be exclusive to the event. 187 A teaser trailer was scheduled to be screened in selected cinemas on April 20, 2015. 188 However, on April 16, the trailer leaked online. 189 And within a few hours Snyder officially released the trailer to Twitter. 190 At the 2015 San Diego Comic-Con, Snyder and the cast attended to present an initial trailer of the film. While the teaser had received mixed response, the trailer was positively received by attendees, who gave it a standing ovation. 191 Mark Hughes of Forbes said the trailers both set the stage for a story about the world's distrust and fear of Superman, Batman's rage at Superman and intention to duke it out with the Man of Steel, and Wonder Woman's participation in a big fight featuring the Trinity. 192. Warner Brothers. Consumer Products partnered up with a powerhouse slate of global licensees for a broad, multi-category licensing and merchandising program, including Mattel, LEGO, Rubies, Funko, Thinquity Toys, Hot Toys, Junk Food, BioWorld, Pez, Seiko, Converse, and among many other licensees to sell merchandise related to the film. 193. 194 Fiat Chrysler Automobiles was also a licensee for the film, offering a special edition Jeep Renegade in exchange for a near-exclusive product placement deal. Aside from Bruce Wayne's Aston Martin, all vehicles in the film were either from Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, or Iveco. 195 Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, Crossfire, an original companion novel tied to the film, telling a tie-in story set before the events of the movie, was published by Scholastic Corporation. 196. Also, there are a series of 4 mini-comics found in Batman v Superman branded General Mills cereals. Additionally, those who purchased Batman v Superman themed Doritos Family Fun Mix at Walmart received the comic book prequel Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, upstairs/downstairs. 197 Rocksteady Studios released downloadable content for the video game Batman: Arkham Knight that featured the Batmobile and Batsuit from the film. 198. The third trailer debuted on Jimmy Kimmel Live on December 3, 2015. Citation needed. It received positive responses. 199 with Scott Mendelson of Forbes calling the trailer a Saturday morning cartoon nerd's wildest dreams. 200. Molly Driscoll of CS Monitor stated that it looks like the film will continue the trend of adapting comic book stories as timely tales. 201. Graham McMillan of The Hollywood Reporter noted that based on the trailer's content, the film might be the anti-Civil War, referring to Marvel's Captain America: Civil War, as Superman and Batman complete the comic book trope by overcoming their differences to fight a common foe, alongside a third hero, who saves them both. That feels the most fresh, especially in light of the Civil War trailer. While that ended with a showdown between 3 heroes, this trailer moves beyond that to show 3 heroes standing united. 202. However, it was criticized for revealing that 203, with Rob Torno of Newsworks pointing out that this trailer was targeting the broadest audience rather than just fans, as studios try to maximize a film's opening day box office. 204. An advertisement for the film on Turkish Airlines Boeing 777-300ER at Istanbul Ataturk Airport. Warner Brothers did not buy a Super Bowl 50 commercial. 205. Instead, they worked with Turkish Airlines to put together a pair of Batman v Superman themed airline commercials. 206. McMillan of The Hollywood Reporter stated that the spots inform interested parties about the culture, geography, and history of Batman and Superman's individual stomping grounds, each one filled with Easter eggs for the comic book faithful and newcomer alike. 207. Jesse Eisenberg's part as Lex Luthor in these commercials was praised, as Dirk Libby of CinemaBlend noted that he matches up well with Bruce Wayne by playing the welcoming billionaire businessman. It's a far cry from the somewhat cartoonish villain we've seen in the clips from the film. 206. The final trailer was released to the public on February 11, 2016, which was described as intense by Kwame Opam of The Verge. 208. Mendelson of Forbes felt that Warner Brothers probably wouldn't have even dropped this one had the prior trailer back in December been received better. So now we have this fourth and final sell, and at least they are going out on a high note. 209. Jonathan Dornbush of Entertainment Weekly said that the footage works to establish Batman as his own independent crime-fighting force, while also providing a deeper look at his existential struggle against Superman. 210. In February 2016, Warner Bros. And Doritos formed a partnership, creating a website offering fans the opportunity to enter codes found on Doritos purchases branded with the film's logo, and enter to win movie tickets, tech toys, and a trip to the premiere in New York City. 212 Warner Bros. Also partnered with Omaze to give fans who donated a chance to win the ultimate Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice experience, while benefiting 3 non-profit organizations nominated by Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, and Jesse Eisenberg. The ultimate Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice experience offered a fan and their friend the chance to win tickets to the premiere of the film, as well as fly on a helicopter with Cavill or ride in the Batmobile with Affleck. 213 Hendrick Motorsports drivers Jimmy Johnson and Dale Earnhardt Jr. drove cars based on Superman and Batman respectively, at Auto Club Speedway on March 20, 2016. 214 A tie-in endless runner video game to the film, entitled Batman vs Superman, Who Will Win, debuted March 16, 2016, released by Warner Bros. International Enterprises. Release. In November 2013, Warner Bros. Announced that Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice would be released on July 17, 2015. In January 2014, however, the studio announced that it was delayed from its original release date and moved to May 6, 2016, in order to give the filmmakers time to realize fully their vision, given the complex visual nature of the story. 216. In August 2014, the release date was moved up to March 25, 2016, with a Warner Bros. Insider saying the studio was not flinching in regards to the previous opening date being on the same day as Marvel Studios' Captain America: Civil War, but instead stating that March 2016 was a fantastic corridor for them. 217 According to sources obtained by The Hollywood Reporter, Warner Bros. Considered the possibility of having a 70mm release for the film, which was partially shot in the 65mm IMAX format. 218. Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice premiered at Auditorio Nacional in Mexico City on March 19, 2016. 219 followed by a New York City premiere on March 20 at Radio City Music Hall. 220 Following the 2016 Brussels bombings, Warner Bros. Originally cancelled the red carpet of the London premiere, but decided to carry on with the premiere for the fans. 221 The film was released in the United States and the United Kingdom on March 25 in 3D. 217 222 It opened simultaneously in North America, China, and Japan, the world's 3 largest film markets, as well as additional international territories. 223 With the exception of Poland, where theaters do not open on Good Friday. The film debuted simultaneously across 30,000 screens in nearly every major foreign territory across 61 markets, including China. In the United States, it opened across roughly 4,242 locations, of which 3,500 theaters, 85%, were in 3D, 390 IMAX screens, 470 PLF locations, 150 D-Box theaters and 10 70mm prints. 224 225 226. Reception. Box office. The film grossed $166 million in the United States and Canada in its opening weekend. 228 The 8th biggest opening of all time, ahead of The Dark Knight Rises' $160.9 million. 227 The film had a worldwide opening of $422.5 million, which stands as the second biggest for Warner Bros. And the 4th biggest of all time at the time of its release. 229 230 It became the 4th film to have a global opening above $400 million. 231 It also had an IMAX worldwide opening weekend total of $36 million from 945 IMAX screens, the 3rd biggest ever, behind Star Wars, The Force Awakens, $48 million, and Jurassic World, $44 million. 231. However, both inside and outside of the United States, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice experienced a notable poor Friday to Sunday hold and set a new record for the worst Friday to Sunday drop for a superhero movie release in modern box office history, with a 58% decline, which was previously held by 2015's Fantastic Four. 232. In its second weekend, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice experienced a historic box office drop, 234 with an 81.2% decline on Friday. That was one of the biggest Friday-to-Friday drops any blockbuster has ever seen, and an overall 68.4% drop for the weekend despite not facing any big competition at the box office. 235, 236, 237, making it the second largest decline for a marquee superhero title, behind only 2003's Hulk. 233. Brad Brevet, writing for Box Office Mojo, reported that it appeared Batman v Superman was looking at a drop anywhere from 58 to 68%, and it ended up settling in on the wrong side of those expectations. 237. Scott Mendelson, writing for Forbes, said whether or not the movie is any good, and whether or not audiences respond to the picture, is best measured by the second and third weekends. Yes, we're still talking about a $15.35 million second Friday and a $1.50 M plus second weekend, but in terms of legs, this film sadly doesn't seem to have any. 238. Continuing this trend, in its third weekend, the film dropped by 54.3%, in which Brad Brevet concluded in a follow-up for Box Office Mojo that the legs on this one are proving quite short. 239. In the weeks leading up to the film's release, advance ticket sales outpaced The Dark Knight Rises, The Avengers, and Furious 7. 240. Worldwide, it was estimated to gross between $300 to $340 million in over 35,000 screens in its opening weekend. 224. 241. It passed the $50 million mark in IMAX ticket sales on its second weekend, grossing a total of $53.4 million from 571 IMAX screens. 242. 243. Warner Bros. U.S. distribution chief Jeff Goldstein described the film's box office performance as a fantastic result, by any measure. 244. Box office analyst Jeff Bock said still, outside of Christopher Nolan's two Dark Knight movies, and Tim Burton's Batman films, when you adjust for inflation, this is the highest grossing property in DC's bullpen thus far. It tops Man of Steel by more than $200 million, and that overall, BVS successfully relaunched DC Cinematic Universe. The film needed to reach $800 million in revenue at the box office to recoup its investment, according to financial analysts. 245. 246. 186. Despite surpassing this amount, it was considered a disappointment for failing to reach $1 billion. 245. 247. 248. This resulted in Warner Bros. Creating DC Films in May 2016, giving a dedicated executive team responsibility for films based on DC Comics, similar to the dedicated Marvel Comics focus of Marvel Studios within the larger Walt Disney Studios Group. 249. Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice grossed $330.4 million in North America and $544 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $874.4 million, making it the seventh highest grossing film of 2016. 7. Deadline Hollywood calculated the net profit of the film to be $105.7 million, when factoring together all expenses and revenues for the film. 250. North America. Following reports of pre-ticket sales in both the United States and Canada on February 29, many insiders and analysts predicted an opening weekend haul between $120 to $140 million for Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, with projections as high as $185 million. 224, 226, 241, 251, 252, 253. However, Warner Brothers insiders were more conservative in their estimates, projecting in the lower range of $110 million. According to Deadline Hollywood, an undisclosed rival studio box office analyst indicated that if the film is truly pacing in tandem with The Dark Knight Rises, then Dawn of Justice could possibly be looking at a $180 million plus debut. 241. The film also became Fandango's top pre-selling superhero film ever, beating The Dark Knight Rises and Avengers: Age of Ultron, representing 90% of the site's weekend's ticket sales. A survey carried out showed that the introduction of Wonder Woman is a primary draw for moviegoers. 252, 254. It pre-sold around $20 to $25 million worth of advance tickets. 252. Dawn of Justice made $27.7 million in Thursday previews from around 3,800 theaters, which is the biggest of 2016, the biggest Easter weekend preview, the second biggest for a superhero film, behind The Dark Knight Rises, and the seventh biggest of all time, of which $3.0 million came from IMAX showings, also a new record for Easter weekend. 255, 256. On its opening day, it earned $81.59 million from 4,242 theaters, including previews, marking the biggest pre-summer opening day of all time, the second biggest Superhero Friday opening, and the fourth biggest opening day and fourth biggest single-day gross, with $9 million coming from IMAX showings. 257. Excluding the Thursday previews, it earned $53.89 million on Friday, which is the fifth biggest ever. 257. It fell 37.8% on Saturday, which is the second worst superhero opening Friday to Saturday drop, only behind the 40% drop of The Dark Knight Rises. 232. In total, it earned $166 million for its debut weekend, setting records for the biggest March and pre-summer openings. 258. The biggest Easter opening. 259. The second biggest opening for Warner Brothers, 260. The biggest for a DC Comics property. 261. And the eighth biggest opening of all time. 228, 262, 263. Conversely, the film holds the record for the worst superhero Friday to Sunday drop with a 58% decline, eclipsing the previous 48% decline record held by Fantastic Four in 2015. 232. IMAX comprised 11% or $18 million of the weekend's gross from 388 theaters, which is the fifth biggest of all time, a record it shares with Age of Ultron, and 3D represented 40%, $68 million, of the total ticket sales. 264. Real D3D comprised $47 million of the opening gross. 262. Premium large formats generated $17.6 million, 10%, with $3.6 million of that coming from Cinemark XD auditoriums from 475 theaters. 262. Following its record-breaking opening weekend, it posted the biggest March Monday with $15.05 million, a drop of 55% from its Sunday gross. This broke the Hunger Games' previous record of $10.80 million, 265,266, and also the biggest March Tuesday with $12.2 million. 267. It made $209 million in its first week full, which stands at the 11th biggest opening week of all time. 268. And surpassed the lifetime total Batman Begins. 269. Despite earning $15.35 million in its second Friday, the film dropped 81.2% and broke the record for the biggest Friday-to-Friday drop for a comic book adaptation film, not including $27.7 million worth of previews, which represented an even larger decline. 270. It fell precipitously by 69.1% in its second weekend, grossing $51.3 million from 4,256 theaters, an addition of 14 cinemas, due to poor reviews and mixed word of mouth, establishing itself an infamous record for the 7th steepest drop for a superhero/comic book adapted film and the steepest decline since the 69% posted by X-Men Origins, Wolverine in 2009, despite facing little to no competition or new wide releases and having the added benefit of 30% K, 12 schools off, and 9% of colleges on break, per ComScore. 272. The steep drop also marks the 4th biggest for a film that opened above $100 million, tied with The Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn, Part 2. 243. In its 3rd weekend it was overtaken by the comedy The Boss after falling 54% with $23.3 million. 273. 274. Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice proved to be front-loaded, failing to generate significant revenue after its opening weekend/week release. It earned just 1.99 times, $330 million, its opening weekend numbers, $166 million, which is lower than Man of Steel's 2.28 multiplier. 275. Like other DC films, such as Watchmen, Green Lantern, and Man of Steel, it opened to record-breaking numbers but then dropped the following weekend onward due largely to bad critical reception and mixed word of mouth from audiences. 276. A similar result was followed by DC's 3rd superhero film, Suicide Squad, released in August 2016. 277. Although Suicide Squad became less front-loaded than Dawn of Justice. 278. Outside North America. Internationally, it was projected to open between $180 to $200 million, however, Deadline.com pointed out that these figures were only early predictions pegged to the performance of similar films in their respective territories. 241. It opened in 10 countries on Wednesday, March 23, 2016, earning $7 million and debuting at number 1 in all markets on approximately 5,900 screens. 279. 280. The following day, the film was released in 38 additional countries, earning $33.1 million on 19,700 screens for a 2-day total of $44 million. 279. On March 25, it opened in the remaining 17 countries, delivering $67.2 million in revenue, for a 3-day total of $115.3 million in 62 countries on more than 30,000 screens. 279. Through Sunday, March 27, it earned an opening weekend total of $256.5 million from 66 countries on over 40,000 screens, making it the biggest superhero opening weekend of all time, the biggest overall March opening, the 2nd biggest opening ever for Warner Brothers, and the 5th biggest international opening on record. 231. 281. The film's accomplishments also included the 2nd biggest IMAX opening record of $18 million, behind only Jurassic World, which tallied $23.5 million. 231. 3D accounted 59% or $149.86 million of the weekend gross, led by China, 98%, Germany, 88%, Brazil, 81%, Russia, 55%, and France, 51%. 231. As with North America, the film witnessed a steep decline in its 2nd Friday internationally, falling 72% to $19.2 million, with the biggest decline in the UK, 77%, and China, 87%. 282. 283. Its 2nd weekend earnings fell 66% overall to $85.25 million. 242. Despite the decline, the film topped the box office for 3 consecutive weekends. 284. In Mexico, it had the biggest opening day for Warner Brothers and the 2nd biggest of all time with $5.8 million, including record-breaking midnight showings. 279. It also scored the biggest opening day of all time in Brazil, $3.5 million, and the biggest opening day for a superhero film in Germany, $2.8 million. 285 elsewhere. It opened in the United Kingdom and Ireland, $9 million, Australia, $2.5 million, India, $2.54 million, Russia, $1.9 million, South Korea, $1.7 million, Japan, $1.2 million, the United Arab Emirates and Hong Kong, $1.1 million respectively. 279. 285 in China. It earned $21.22 million on its opening day, including around $1.34 million worth of previews, which is the biggest for Warner Brothers and the sixth biggest Hollywood opening day of all time. 279. 286 However, other Chinese sources have the film open to around $20 million. 287. 288 In terms of opening weekends, the biggest openings were recorded in China, $57.2 million, the United Kingdom and Ireland, $20.7 million, Mexico, $18.2 million, Brazil, $12 million, South Korea, $10.2 million, Australia, $9.9 million, France, $8.6 million, Germany, $8.1 million, Russia, $7.7 million, India, $6.6 million, Spain, $6.1 million, and Japan, $4.5 million. 231. 289 It broke all-time opening record in Brazil and Warner Brothers opening records in Mexico, Hong Kong, India, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Peru, Puerto Rico, and Venezuela. 231 In the United Kingdom and Ireland. It benefited from the long Easter weekend holiday, and despite a distinctly mixed bag of reviews in the UK press, it posted an opening £14.62 million or $20.7 million from 612 theaters, a record for 2016 so far and for a superhero title on straight Friday to Sunday, but fell short of The Avengers and Avengers: Age of Ultron, when accounting for previews. 290. 291 In Japan, it opened in third place, behind two local films, Assassination Classroom, Graduation, and Doraemon, Nobita and the Birth of Japan 2016. 292 In South Korea, it scored the biggest March opening after opening on a Tuesday and dominating 68.3% of the market share with $10.2 million. 293 In China, after scoring the biggest Hollywood opening Friday, behind Transformers: Age of Extinction, 294 It earned an estimated $57.2 million from approximately 16,000 screens in its opening weekend, besting all other DC Comics adaptation film just by its weekend haul except for Man of Steel, and gave Warner Brothers its biggest three-day opening there with $7 million coming from 557 IMAX screens. 231. 295 However, the opening figure fell below analysts' projections of $70 to $80 million. 296 It held the top spot for its first 7 days only, after which it faced stiff competitions from local productions 283 and fell dramatically from then onwards in accruing revenue. 297 As a result, it fell to third place in its second weekend after falling enormously by 78% to $12.7 million, a record for a superhero film. 242. 298 It became the Warner Brothers' highest-grossing film of all time in India, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. 299 It also crossed $100 million Latin American markets, making it Warner Brothers' second highest-grossing film there. 299 In total earnings, its biggest markets outside of North America are China, $95 million, followed by the UK, $52.1 million, Mexico, $36 million, and Brazil, $35.5 million. 300. Critical response. On review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 29% based on 439 reviews and an average rating of 5/10. The website's critical consensus reads, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice smothers a potentially powerful story, and some of America's most iconic superheroes, in a grim whirlwind of effects-driven action. 301. Metacritic, which assigns a weighted average to critics' reviews, gave the film an average score of 44 out of 100 based on 51 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. 302 audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B on an A+ to F scale. 303 it earned B from men, B from women, a B from those under 25 and a B from those over 25. 264 according to PostTrack, 73% of audiences graded the film very good or excellent, with a 60% giving it a definite recommend. 304 BBC News reported that the film had been widely praised by fans after its first screening in New York. 305. Lindy West in The Guardian described the film as 153 minutes of a grown man whacking two dolls together, asking H as the definition of movie changed from motion picture story that a human wrote on purpose to 700 only tangentially related 12-second gray and red vignettes. 306. A.O. Scott of the New York Times wrote, "The point of Batman v Superman isn't fun, and it isn't thinking, either. It's obedience. The theology is invoked, to buttress a spectacle of power. And in that way the film serves as a metaphor for its own aspirations. The corporations that produce movies like this one, and the ambitious hacks who sign up to make them, have no evident motive beyond their own aggrandizement." 307. Writing in The Telegraph, Robbie Collin called the film humorless and the most incoherent blockbuster in years. 308 Cynthia Fuchs of Pop Matters said, "As you're watching this movie, you might also contemplate your own part, in being swayed into consuming so much of what you've consumed before," adding, "Wonder Woman remains Batman v Superman's most compelling story, precisely because it's untold." 309. Matt Patches of Thrillist wrote, "What Batman v Superman can do, it does, at the cost of coherency and thrills. The movie is batshit crazy. A dour, disdainful demeanor, plus a gluttony of complex plot twists, dissipates most of the contact high." 310. Michael Phillips of Chicago Tribune wrote, "A near total drag, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice plays like a loose, unofficial $250 million remake of The Odd Couple, in which Oscar and Felix are literally trying to kill each other." 311. On his podcast Hollywood Babylon, film director Kevin Smith, a longtime friend and collaborator of Affleck, praised Affleck's performance but panned the film, commenting that it didn't really have a heart and was humorless, arguing that there seems to be a fundamental lack of understanding of what those characters are about. "It's almost like Zack Snyder didn't read a bunch of comics, he read one comic once, and it was Dark Knight Returns, and his favorite part was the last part where Batman and Superman fight." 312. On a second viewing, however, Smith via his Instagram lightened his stance. 313. David Betancourt of The Washington Post and Scott Mendelson of Forbes praised the film's visual spectacle and performances from Affleck and Gadot, though Mendelson also called the film an utter mess of thinly sketched characters, haphazard plotting, surprisingly jumbled action. 314. 315 Peter Travers of Rolling Stone called the film better than Man of Steel but below the high bar set by Nolan's Dark Knight, adding that Dawn of Justice is still a colossus, the stuff that DC Comics dreams are made of for that kid in all of us who yearns to see Batman and Superman suit up and go in for the kill. 316. Jake Coyle of Associated Press wrote, "It hurdles not with the kinetic momentum of Mad Max, Fury Road nor the comparatively spry skip of a Marvel movie, but with an operatic grandeur it sometimes earns and often doesn't." 317. Mark Hughes of Forbes called it the follow-up to The Dark Knight that many viewers and fans wanted or hoped for, adding that it's visually stunning, with powerful emotional storytelling and awe-inspiring action spectacle. 318. Andrew Barker of Variety said as a pure visual spectacle, Batman v Superman ably blows the hinges off the multiplex doors. 319. Charles Kolinsky of the Illinois Times called it a brooding, but most importantly intelligent take on the seminal figures of our 20th century pop culture mythology, a movie that at once pays tribute to these characters' roots while offering up modern incarnations of them that ring true for our times. 320. Nicholas Barber of the BBC called the film a four-star epic, praising Affleck's performance as Batman and the visual grandeur of Fong's cinematography. 321. Jordan Hoffman of The Guardian gave an ambivalent review. He especially criticized the very bad writing, but conceded there are a lot of moments that work, and praised Affleck and Gadot's performances, calling Gadot as Wonder Woman the best thing in the film. 322. Multiple commentators criticized Eisenberg on the grounds that his interpretation of Lex Luthor hewed too close to character traits associated with another DC Comics villain, the Joker. 323. Even before the film was released, Affleck compared Eisenberg's performance to that of Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. 324. Once the film came out, critics lambasted Eisenberg's take on Luthor. Sonny Bunch of the Washington Post lamented that as the film progresses, Lex degenerates into a gibbering madman, some strange mix of the Riddler and the Joker with a little bit of Mark Zuckerberg added for flair. 325. Charlie Jane Anders of Gizmodo wrote that someone clearly told Jesse Eisenberg that this movie is the Dark Knight to Man of Steel's Batman Begins, and he's doing his damnedest to give a Heath Ledger-esque performance. Watching the trailers, I had thought Eisenberg's loopy acting might be this movie's saving grace, but a concentrated dose of his faux-mania actually turns out to be the worst thing. Andy Scott of Grunge, in an article titled How Jesse Eisenberg Ruined Batman v Superman, wrote that Eisenberg's speech patterns and mannerisms felt almost entirely lifted from Ledger's iconic performance, to the point where he walked the dangerous gray line between respectful homage and downright thievery. 326. Eisenberg responded to the critiques by saying he attempted to make these people real and relatable and interesting and engaging, not just, a surface bad person. 327. Writer Chris Terrio said the decision to remove 30 minutes for the theatrical cut was an act of sabotage. 328. In June 2018, Mise en Scene, the Journal of Film and Visual Narration, published the article applying suspense to archetypal superheroes, Hitchcockian ambiguity in Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, which argued that the film warrants analysis as a particularly ambitious development within the evolving superhero genre. It applies a remarkable amount of Hitchcockian thrills to a story pitting two protagonists against one another within a villain's conspiracy to create the first live-action Hitchcockian superhero thriller featuring branded, culturally established characters. By displacing its protagonists from their inherently justified positions, it creates a critical moral ambiguity that directly deconstructs the assumptions at the heart of Western society's two most archetypal superheroes. 329. In 2023, director Zack Snyder dives into why audiences and critics didn't engage with Batman v Superman. I think that probably is what caused the movie to be so polarizing. I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of people went into the movies for going like, oh, it's the superhero romp, right? Let's have fun with it. And we gave them this sort of hardcore deconstructivist, heavily layered, experiential modern mythological superhero movie that you really need to pay attention to. That was not cool for them. That's not something anyone wanted to do. They were like, what? No. That's exhausting. How about, why do they fight at night? I hate that. Themes and analysis. Batman v Superman has been interpreted as an allegory about contemporary American politics, particularly America's response to 9/11. 340, 341, 342, 343, 344, 345. Writing for the commercial appeal, John Bifus noted the similarities between the Metropolis battle at the beginning of the film and 9/11. The idea is that just as 9/11 had a transformative existential impact on the psyche of America, the Battle of Metropolis, and the subsequent realization that an all-powerful alien could destroy his adopted planet with ease, has altered human consciousness, creating new standards of morality and levels of fear, the feeling of powerlessness that turns good men cruel, in the words of Wayne's butler, Alfred, Jeremy Irons. 342. He says that Batman comes out of the Metropolis battle scene as a changed, and even more deranged, man. 342. Kofi Outlaw of comicbook.com interpreted the allegory as Batman representing the right-wing hawk reaction to 9/11. An America that prefers security over civil liberties, the Bush-era mentality of stopping threats proactively before they can threaten close to home. 341. Meanwhile, Superman, Outlaw writes, represents the more left-wing, liberal, American ideal, while Luthor represents insidious opportunists who exploited, and still exploit, the turmoil of a post-9/11, war-torn, world for personal gain. 341. Outlaw suggests that the scene where Batman and Superman find common ground in their mothers is parallel to the notion that conflicting political ideologies still have similarities. 341. Writing for Screen Rant, Andrew Dice wrote Bruce has, like so many political figures and nations, given up the moral high ground, rationalized his extreme methods as necessary, identified an enemy he does not seek to understand, and abandoned the spirit, if not the explicit values upon which his country, rather, upon which his mission was founded. 345. Writing for Vice, Kaleem Aftab wrote that the film was intended as an unpleasant lambast of the government and the popular reaction to 9/11. 343. He compared Superman's character to the Muslim American experience, concluding that the film is a condemnation of what America is becoming, a place where immigrants, especially those unfairly tainted because of the mass destruction caused by a few, are no longer part of a viable American dream. 343. Writing for The New Yorker, Richard Brody analyzed the allegory differently. Batman, according to Brody, represents the Democratic Party, whereas Superman represents the Republican Party. Brody feels this notion is supported by the fact that Batman's eyes glow blue when he is wearing the exoskeleton and Superman's glow red when he uses his heat vision. 340. Brody criticized this allegory as salacious for suggesting that the Democratic Party allies itself with evil, which he says has no relationship to contemporary politics. 340. However, he called it a powerful metaphor for suggesting there'd be much less of an urge to find a superhero or to magnify demagogues who pretend to be one if politicians merely did their jobs competently and sensitively. 340. Mark Hughes, writing for Forbes, notes that the film inverts the politics of The Dark Knight Returns by having Superman as the outsider character who is questioned by the government and media. He writes this is a reversal of sorts from the comic, where Superman represents the establishment perspective while Batman is the outcast under constant press, public, and government scrutiny. 344. He also noted how Batman sees Superman as human for the first time during the Martha scene. He's never looked at Superman as a real person or as a man before. Then suddenly Superman is vulnerable, he has a regular guy's name and a woman who loves him crying over him, and a mom. His last words are basically "save my mother." We see, very emotionally, how Batman realizes what he's doing and that he's the bad guy, a painful but very human revelatory moment. 344. Richard Newby, writing for The Hollywood Reporter, wrote the Martha scene is Bruce's opportunity to reconnect with his own humanity and the humanity of Superman. Batman doesn't end the fight because their mothers have the same name, but because he recognizes Superman as someone with a mother, and thus a human, despite his alien origins. The battle against Superman is ultimately Bruce's realization that he can be better and reconnect with humanity again. It's not a redemption, or a full change, as he does kill mercenaries at the warehouse in the following scene, but it is a start. 346. Ben Affleck said he liked the idea of showing accountability and the consequences of violence and seeing that there are real people in those buildings, with the scene of Bruce Wayne at the Battle of Metropolis. 347. Director's Cut. An extended cut of the film dubbed the Ultimate Edition was released on home media platforms, alongside the theatrical cut. This version is longer by 31 minutes 348 and received an R rating from the Motion Picture Association of America, for more violence than the PG-13 rated theatrical cut. 97 349. Upon the release of the Ultimate Edition, critics noted that the film would have likely been better received with the additional footage. 350 351. Mark Hughes of Forbes stated that while not everyone changed their hated it ratings to loved it after viewing the new 3-hour edit of the film, it appears most so far are declaring the longer version a big improvement, moving the film out of the bad column and into the good. 352. He also stated that the film's reputation would improve with future retrospect, and with the director's cut, that process got underway even faster than he expected when the Ultimate Edition got its one-night theatrical release. 352. Ben Kendrick of Screen Rant stated that while it was more intelligible, character portrayal was not fundamentally changed, and for viewers who didn't like Man of Steel or Batman v Superman for larger reasons, such as tone, approach, and the darker characterization of DC's most iconic heroes, the Ultimate Edition is only a longer version of a film that is likely to remain divisive, even if the final product is a better film. 353. Phil Owens of The Wrap called it an improvement upon the original cut, writing, "Lo and behold, somehow Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice has become something that approaches a functional movie. In the process, it only makes the original cut even more inexplicable and terrible." 354. Home video. On the home video sales chart, the film debuted in first place for the week ending July 24, 2016. 355. In the United States, it made $23.4 million in DVD sales and $58.9 million in Blu-ray sales, for an estimated total of $82.4 million. 356. The film was the 7th best-selling video title of 2016. 357. Despite being shot partially on IMAX film and released to IMAX theaters with select scenes in either 1.43:1 or 1.90:1, the initial Blu-ray release only featured the fixed 2.39:1 aspect ratio that was used for non-IMAX screenings. However, on December 12, 2020, Snyder revealed that he is working to restore the IMAX ratio to the film for an upcoming re-release in 2021. 358. On March 4, 2021, Warner Bros. Announced that a remastered version of the Ultimate Edition, with the IMAX scenes presented in their original aspect ratio of 1.43:1, would be released onto digital platforms and HBO Max on March 18, 2021. The same day Zack Snyder's Justice League was released, and would also be released on Ultra HD Blu-ray several days later on March 23. Benjamin Affleck, born August 15, 1972, is an American actor and filmmaker. His accolades include 2 Academy Awards, 2 BAFTA Awards, and 3 Golden Globes. Affleck began his career as a child when he starred in the PBS educational series The Voyage of the Mimi, 1984 to 1988. He later appeared in the independent comedy Dazed and Confused, 1993, and several Kevin Smith comedies, including Chasing Amy, 1997. Affleck gained wider recognition when he and Matt Damon won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay for writing Good Will Hunting, 1997, which they also starred in. He established himself as a leading man in studio films, including the disaster film Armageddon, 1998, the action crime thriller Reindeer Games, 2000, the war drama Pearl Harbor, 2001, and the thriller The Sum of All Fears, 2002. After a career downturn, Affleck made a comeback by portraying George Reeves in the biopic Hollywoodland, 2006, winning the Volpe Cup for Best Actor. His directorial debut, Gone Baby Gone, 2007, which he also co-wrote, was well received. He then directed and starred in the crime drama The Town, 2010, and the political thriller Argo, 2012, both of which were critical and commercial successes. For the latter, Affleck won the BAFTA Award for Best Director, and the BAFTA and Academy Award for Best Picture. Affleck then starred in the psychological thriller Gone Girl, 2014, and played the superhero Batman in the DC Extended Universe, 2016 to 2023. He starred in the thriller The Accountant, 2016, and the sports drama The Way Back, 2020. Affleck had supporting roles in the dramas The Last Duel, 2021, The Tender Bar, 2021, and Air, 2023, the third of which he also directed. Affleck is the co-founder of the Eastern Congo Initiative, a grant-making and advocacy-based non-profit organization. He is a supporter of the Democratic Party. Affleck and Damon are co-owners of the production company Artists Equity and were also co-owners of Pearl Street Films. Early life. Affleck was born Benjamin Gaza Affleck Bolt on August 15, 1972, in Berkeley, California. 2-3 His family moved to Massachusetts when he was 3-4, living in Falmouth, where his brother Casey was born, before settling in Cambridge. 5 His mother, Christopher and Chris Bolt 6 was a Harvard-educated elementary school teacher. 7-8 His father, Timothy Byers Affleck 9 was an aspiring playwright 9 who was mostly unemployed. 10 He worked sporadically as a carpenter 11 auto mechanic 4 bookie 12 electrician 13 bartender 14 and janitor at Harvard. 15 In the mid-1960s, he had been an actor and stage manager with the Theatre Company of Boston. 16. During Affleck's childhood, his father had a self-described severe, chronic problem with alcoholism. 17 And Affleck has recalled him drinking all day, every day. 18 His father was very difficult. 19 And Affleck felt a sense of relief at the age of 11 when his parents divorced 2021 and his father exited the family home. 17-9 His father continued to drink heavily 7 and eventually became homeless, spending 2 years living on the streets of Cambridge. 12-22 When Affleck was 16, his father entered a rehabilitation facility in Indio, California. He lived at the facility for 12 years to maintain his sobriety. 23 And worked there as an addiction counselor. 7-24 Affleck was raised in a politically active, liberal household. 12-25 He and his brother, Casey, were surrounded by people who worked in the arts. 26 The boys regularly attended theater performances with their mother. 27 And were encouraged to make their own home movies. 28 David Wheeler, a family friend, later remembered Affleck as a very bright and intensely curious child. 29 The brothers auditioned for roles in local commercials and film productions because of their mother's friendship with a Cambridge area casting director. 14 And Affleck first acted professionally at the age of 7. 29 His mother saved his wages in a college trust fund. 9 And hoped her son would ultimately become a teacher, worrying that acting was an insecure and frivolous profession. 30 When Affleck was 13, he filmed a children's television program in Mexico. He learned to speak Spanish during a year spent traveling around the country with his mother and brother. 31-32 As a Cambridge Rindge and Latin high school student, Affleck acted in theater productions and was inspired by drama teacher Gary Specka. 33-34 He became close friends with fellow student Matt Damon, whom he had known since the age of 8. 35 Although Damon was 2 years older, the pair had identical interests and both wanted to pursue acting careers. 35 They traveled to New York together for acting auditions. 36 And saved money for train and airline tickets in a joint bank account. 37 While Affleck had high SAT scores 9, he was largely an unfocused student with poor attendance. 738 He spent a few months studying Spanish at the University of Vermont, chosen because of its proximity to his then girlfriend. 13 But he left after fracturing his hip while playing basketball. 36 At 18, Affleck moved to Los Angeles. 30 Studying Middle Eastern Affairs at Occidental College for a year and a half. 39-40 Career 1981 to 1997, Child Acting and Good Will Hunting. Affleck acted professionally throughout his childhood, but, in his own words, not in the sense that I had a mom that wanted to take me to Hollywood or a family that wanted to make money from me. I kind of chanced into something. 41. He first appeared, at the age of 7, in an independent film, The Dark End of the Street, 1981, directed by a family friend. 42. His biggest success as a child actor was as the star of the PBS children's series The Voyage of the Mimi, 1984, and The Second Voyage of the Mimi, 1988, produced for 6th grade science classes. Affleck worked sporadically on Mimi from the age of 8 to 15 in both Massachusetts and Mexico. 41. As a teenager, he appeared in the ABC after-school special Wanted, A Perfect Man, 1986, 43. The television film Hands of a Stranger, 1987, 41 and a 1989 Burger King commercial. 34. After high school, Affleck moved briefly to New York in search of acting work. 41. Later, while studying at Occidental College in Los Angeles, Affleck directed student films. 1244. As an actor, he had a series of knockaround parts, one to the next. 41. He played Patrick Duffy's son in the television film Daddy, 1991, made an uncredited appearance as a basketball player in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer film, 1992, and had a supporting role as a prep school student in School Ties, 1992. 45. He played a high school quarterback in the NBC television series Against the Grain, 1993, and a steroid-abusing high school football player in Body to Die For, The Aaron Henry Story, 1994. Affleck's most notable role during this period was as a high school bully in Richard Linklater's cult classic Dazed and Confused, 1993. 46. Linklater wanted a likable actor for the villainous role, and, while Affleck was big and imposing, he was so smart and full of life. I just liked him. 47-48. Affleck later said Linklater was instrumental in demystifying the filmmaking process for him. 12. Affleck's first starring film role was as an aimless art student in the college drama Glory Days, 1995, with Stephen Holden of the New York Times remarking that his affably mopey performance finds just the right balance between obnoxious and sad sack. 49. He then played a bully in filmmaker Kevin Smith's comedy Mallrats, 1995, and became friends with Smith during the filming. Affleck had begun to worry that he would be relegated to a career of throwing people into their lockers, 41, but Smith wrote him a lead role in the romantic comedy Chasing Amy, 1997. 441. The film was Affleck's breakthrough. 41. Janet Maslin of the New York Times praised Affleck's wonderful ease playing the role, combining suave good looks with cool comic timing. 50. Owen Gleiberman of Entertainment Weekly described it as a wholesome and quick-witted performance. 51. When Affleck starred as a recently returned Korean War veteran in the coming-of-age drama Going All the Way, 1997, Todd McCarthy of Variety found him excellent, 52. While Janet Maslin of the New York Times noted that his flair for comic self-doubt made a strong impression. 53. Bill Clinton, Ben Affleck, and Matt Damon sit on two sofas while looking towards a television screen. Affleck and Matt Damon attend a Camp David screening of Good Will Hunting with President Bill Clinton in January 1998. The success of 1997's Good Will Hunting, which Affleck co-wrote and acted in, marked a turning point in his career. The screenplay originated in 1992 when Damon wrote a 40-page script for a playwriting class at Harvard University. 54. He asked Affleck to act out the scenes with him in front of the class and, When Damon later moved into Affleck's Los Angeles apartment, they began working on the script in earnest. 35 The film, which they wrote mainly during improvisation sessions, was set partly in their hometown of Cambridge and drew from their own experiences. 55 The screenplay was born of their desire to create an acting reel for themselves. 56 They sold the screenplay to Castle Rock in 1994 when Affleck was 22 years old. During the development process, they received notes from industry figures, including Rob Reiner and William Goldman. 57 Following a lengthy dispute with Castle Rock about a suitable director, Affleck and Damon persuaded Miramax to purchase the screenplay. 11 The two friends moved back to Boston for a year before the film finally went into production, directed by Gus Van Sant, and co-starring Damon, Affleck, Minnie Driver, and Robin Williams. 54 On its release, Janet Maslin of the New York Times praised the smart and touching screenplay, 58 while Emmanuel Levy of Variety found it funny, nonchalant, moving and angry. 59 Jay Carr of the Boston Globe wrote that Affleck brought a beautifully nuanced tenderness to his role as the working-class friend of Damon's mathematical prodigy character. 60 Affleck and Damon eventually won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. 12 Affleck has described this period of his life as dreamlike. It was like one of those scenes in an old movie when a newspaper comes spinning out of the black onto the screen. You know, $100 million box office. Awards. 36 He remains the youngest writer, at age 25, ever to win an Oscar for screenwriting. 54-61. 1998 to 2002, leading man status. Ben Affleck, Michael Bay, and Liv Tyler posing on the red carpet. Affleck with Michael Bay and Liv Tyler at the Armageddon premiere in June 1998. Armageddon, released in 1998, established Affleck as a viable leading man for Hollywood studio films. Good Will Hunting had not yet been released during the casting process and, after Affleck's screen test, director Michael Bay dismissed him as a geek. Producer Jerry Bruckheimer convinced Bay that Affleck would be a star 30 but he was required to lose weight, become tanned, and get his teeth capped before filming began. 62 The film, where he starred opposite Bruce Willis as a blue-collar driller tasked by NASA with stopping an asteroid from colliding with Earth, was a box office success. 63 Daphne Merkin of The New Yorker remarked, Affleck demonstrates a sexy Paul Newmanish charm and is clearly bound for stardom. 64. Later in 1998, Affleck had a supporting role as an arrogant English actor in the period romantic comedy Shakespeare in Love, starring his then-girlfriend Gwyneth Paltrow. Lael Lowenstein of Variety remarked that Affleck does some of his very best work, suggesting that comedy may be his true calling. 65 While Janet Maslin of the New York Times found him very funny. 66 Shakespeare in Love won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, while the cast won the Screen Actors Guild Award for Outstanding Performance by a Cast. Affleck then appeared as a small-town sheriff in the supernatural horror film Phantoms. 41 Stephen Holden of the New York Times wondered why actors like Affleck and Peter O'Toole had agreed to appear in the junkie film. Affleck's stunning performance suggests he is reading his dialogue for the first time, directly from cue cards. 67. Affleck and Damon had an on-screen reunion in Kevin Smith's religious satire Dogma, which premiered at the 1999 Cannes Film Festival. Janet Maslin of the New York Times remarked that the pair, playing fallen angels, bring great, understandable enthusiasm to Mr. Smith's smart talk and wild imaginings. 68 Affleck starred opposite Sandra Bullock in the romantic comedy Forces of Nature, 1999, playing a groom whose attempts to get to his wedding are complicated by his free-spirited traveling companion. Joe Layton of Variety praised his winning ability to play against his good looks in a self-effacing comic turn. 69 Affleck then appeared opposite Courtney Love in the Little Scene ensemble comedy 200 Cigarettes, 1999. 70. Interested in a directorial career, Affleck shadowed John Frankenheimer throughout pre-production of the action thriller Reindeer Games, 2000. 3071 Frankenheimer, directing his last feature film, described Affleck as having a very winning, likable quality about him. "I've been doing this for a long time and he's really one of the nicest." 72. He starred opposite Charlize Theron as a hardened criminal, with Elvis Mitchell of the New York Times enjoying the unexpected casting choice. Affleck often suggests one of the Kennedys playing Clark Kent. He looks as if he has never missed a party or a night's sleep. He's game, though, and his slight dislocation works to the advantage of reindeer games. 73. He then had a supporting role as a ruthless stockbroker in the crime drama Boiler Room, 2000. 71. AO. Scott of the New York Times felt Affleck had merely traced over Alec Baldwin's performance in Glengarry Glen Ross. 74. While Peter Rayner of New York Magazine said he does a series of riffs on Baldwin's aria, and each one is funnier and crueler than the next. 75. He provided the voice of Joseph in the animated Joseph, King of Dreams. 76. In his last film role of 2000, Affleck starred opposite his girlfriend Paltrow in the romantic drama Bounce. Stephen Holden of the New York Times praised the understated intensity and exquisite detail of his performance. His portrait of a young, sarcastically self-defined people person who isn't half as confident as he would like to appear is close to definitive. 77. Affleck reunited with director Michael Bay for the critically derided war drama Pearl Harbor, 2001. 78. Todd McCarthy of Variety wrote the blandly handsome Affleck couldn't convince that he'd ever so much as been turned down for a date, much less lost the love of his life to his best friend. 79. Affleck then parroted Good Will Hunting with Damon and Van Sant in Kevin Smith's Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, 2001. '80 made a cameo in the comedy Daddy and Them, 2001. '81 and had a supporting role in the little scene The Third Wheel, 2002. 29. He portrayed the CIA analyst Jack Ryan in the thriller The Sum of All Fears, 2002. Stephen Holden of the New York Times felt he was miscast in a role previously played by both Harrison Ford and Alec Baldwin. Although Mr. Affleck can be appealing when playing earnest young men groping toward maturity, he simply lacks the gravitas for the role. 82. Affleck had an amazing experience making the thriller Changing Lanes, 2002, 41 and later cited Roger Mitchell as someone he learned from as a director. 71. 83. Robert Kohler of Variety described it as one of his most thoroughly wrought performances. The journey into a moral fog compels him to play more inwardly and thoughtfully than he ever has before. 84. Affleck became more involved with television and film production in the early 2000s. He and Damon had set up Pearl Street Films in 1998-85, named after the street that ran between their childhood homes. 86. Their next production company Live Planet, co-founded in 2000 with Sean Bailey and Chris Moore, sought to integrate the internet into mainstream television and film production. 86. 87. Live Planet's biggest success was the documentary series Project Greenlight, aired on HBO and later Bravo, which focused on first-time filmmakers being given the chance to direct a feature film. Project Greenlight was nominated for the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Reality Program in 2002, 2004 and 2005. 88. Push, Nevada, 2002, created, written and produced by Affleck and Bailey. 89 was an ABC mystery drama series that placed a viewer participation game within the frame of the show. 90. Karen James of the New York Times praised the show's nerve, imagination, and clever writing. 91. But Robert Bianco of USA Today described it as a knockoff of Twin Peaks. 92. The show was cancelled by ABC after 7 episodes due to low ratings. 93. Over time, Live Planet's focus shifted from multimedia projects to more traditional film production. 87. Affleck and his partners signed a film production deal with Disney in 2002, it expired in 2007. 94. 95. 2003 to 2005, career downturn and tabloid notoriety. While Affleck had been a tabloid figure for much of his career, 29, he was the subject of increased media attention in 2003 because of his relationship with Jennifer Lopez. By the end of the year, Affleck had become, in the words of GQ, the world's most overexposed actor. 96. His tabloid fame coincided with a series of poorly received films. Ben Affleck, with a trim goatee and mustache, is surrounded by hands reaching out to him. Affleck visiting U.S. Marines in Manama, Bahrain in 2003. The first of these was Daredevil, 2003, in which Affleck starred as the blind superhero. Affleck was a longtime comic book fan, and, in 1999, had written a foreword for Kevin Smith's Guardian Devil about his love for the character of Daredevil. 97. The film was a commercial success. 98. But received a mixed response from critics. Elvis Mitchell of the New York Times said Affleck was lost in the role. Affleck is shriveled by the one-dimensional role. Only his scenes with Jon Favreau have a playful side that allows Mr. Affleck to show his generosity as an actor. 99. In 2014, Affleck described Daredevil as the only film he regretted making. 12. He next appeared as a low-ranking mobster in the romantic comedy Giggly, 2003, co-starring Lopez. The film was almost uniformly panned 100-101, with Manala Dargis of the Los Angeles Times remarking that Affleck doesn't have the chops or the charm to maneuver around, or past, bad material. 102. Rex Reed of The Observer criticized the co-stars, writing that the film reminds the world how pathetically incompetent they both are in the only two things that matter in career longevity, craft and talent. 103. Yet Affleck has repeatedly defended director Martin Brest since the film's release, describing him as one of the really great directors. 71. 104. In his last film role of 2003, Affleck starred as a reverse engineer in the sci-fi thriller Paycheck, 2003. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian remarked on Affleck's self-deprecating charm and wondered why he could not find better scripts. 105. Manala Dargis of the Los Angeles Times found it almost unfair to critique Affleck, given that he had such a rough year. 106. Affleck's poor critical notices continued in 2004 when he starred as a bereaved husband in the romantic comedy Jersey Girl, directed by longtime collaborator Smith. Stephen Holden of the New York Times described Affleck as an actor whose talent has curdled as his tabloid notoriety has spread. 107. Later that year, he starred opposite James Gandolfini in the holiday comedy Surviving Christmas. Holden noted in the New York Times that the film found a clever way to use Ben Affleck's disagreeable qualities. The actor's shark-like grin, cocky petulance, and bullying frat boy swagger befit his character. 108. At this point, the quality of scripts offered to Affleck was just getting worse and worse. The negative press coverage really started to affect him. 109. And he decided to take a career break. 110. The Los Angeles Times published a piece on the downfall of Affleck's career in late 2004. The article noted that, unlike film critics and tabloid journalists, few industry professionals seem to be gloating over Affleck's travails. 111. 2006 to 2015, emergence as a director. Affleck began a career comeback in 2006 with his acclaimed performance as Superman actor George Reeves in the noir biopic Hollywoodland. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone praised an award-caliber performance. This is feeling, nuanced work from an actor some of us had prematurely written off. 112. Jeffrey McNabb of The Guardian said he beautifully captured the character's curious mix of charm, vulnerability, and fatalism. 113. He was awarded the Volpe Cup at the Venice Film Festival and was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor. 114. Also in 2006, he made a cameo in Smith's Clerks 2. 115. Starred in the little scene Man About Town and had a minor role in the crime drama Smokin' Aces. 116. 117. In 2007, Affleck made his feature film directorial debut with Gone Baby Gone, a crime drama set in a working-class Boston neighborhood, starring his brother Casey as a private investigator searching for a young abductee. Affleck co-wrote the screenplay, based on the book by Dennis Lehane, with childhood friend Aaron Stockard, having first mentioned his intention to adapt the story in 2003. 118-119 It opened to enthusiastic reviews. 120 Manala Dargis of the New York Times praised the film's sensitivity to real struggle, 121 while Stephen Farber of The Hollywood Reporter described it as thoughtful, deeply poignant, and splendidly executed. 122. While Affleck intended to keep a primary emphasis on directing going forward in his career, 123 he acted in 3 films in 2009. In the ensemble romantic comedy He's Just Not That Into You, the chemistry between Affleck and Jennifer Aniston was praised. 124-125 Affleck played a congressman in the political thriller State of Play. Wesley Morris of the Boston Globe found him very good in the film's silliest role. 126 But David Adelstein of New York Magazine remarked of Affleck, he might be smart and thoughtful in life, but as an actor his wheels turn too slowly. 127. He had a supporting role as a bartender in the little scene comedy film Extract. 128 Peter Travers of Rolling Stone described his performance as a goofball delight, 129 while Manala Dargis of the New York Times declared it a real performance. 130 In 2010, Affleck starred in The Company Men as a mid-level sales executive who was made redundant during the 2008 financial crisis. 131 David Denby of The New Yorker declared that Affleck gives his best performance yet, 132 while Richard Corliss of Time found he nails Bobby's plunge from hubris to humiliation. 133. Ben Affleck, wearing a tracksuit top, smiles. Affleck on the set of The Town in 2010. Following the modest commercial success of Gone Baby Gone, Warner Brothers developed a close working relationship with Affleck and offered him his choice of the studio's scripts. 7. He decided to direct the crime drama The Town, 2010, an adaptation of Chuck Hogan's novel Prince of Thieves. He also rewrote the screenplay and starred in the film as a bank robber. The film became a surprise box office hit, and gained further critical acclaim for Affleck. 134-135 A.O. Scott of the New York Times praised his skill and self-confidence as a serious director. 136 while Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times noted, Affleck has the stuff of a real director. Everything is here. It's an effective thriller, he works closely with actors, he has a feel for pacing. 137. Also in 2010, Affleck and Damon's production company, Pearl Street Films, signed a first-look producing deal at Warner Brothers. 138. Affleck soon began work on his next directorial project, Argo, 2012, for Warner Brothers. Written by Chris Terrio and starring Affleck as a CIA operative, the film tells the story of the CIA plan to save 6 U.S. diplomats during the 1979 Iran hostage crisis by faking a production for a large-scale science fiction film. Anthony Lane of The New Yorker said the film offered further proof that we were wrong about Ben Affleck. 139 Peter Travers of Rolling Stone remarked, Affleck takes the next step in what looks like a major directing career. He directs the hell out of it, nailing the quickening pace, the wayward humor, the nerve-frying suspense. 140. A major critical and commercial success. 141 Argo won the Academy Award, Golden Globe Award, and BAFTA Award for Best Picture. 142 The cast won the Screen Actors Guild Award for Outstanding Performance by a Cast. Affleck himself won the Golden Globe Award, Directors Guild of America Award, and BAFTA Award for Best Director, becoming the first director to win these awards without a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Director. 143. The following year, Affleck played a romantic lead in Terrence Malick's experimental drama To the Wonder. Malick, a close friend of Affleck's godfather, first met Affleck in the 1990s to offer advice about the plot of Good Will Hunting. 144 Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian enjoyed a performance of dignity and sensitivity. 145. While the New Yorker's Richard Brody described Affleck as a solid and muscular performer who conveys a sense of thoughtful and willful individuality. 146. Affleck's performance as a poker boss was considered a highlight of the poorly reviewed thriller Runner, 2013. 147. 148. Betsy Sharkey of the Los Angeles Times remarked that it was one killer of a character, and Affleck plays him like a Bach concerto, every note perfectly played. 149. He then pushed back production on his own directorial project,